Hey, it's Kai from MXHideout. Are you looking to upgrade your XR100 or CRF100 to make it faster, more comfortable, or safer? There's hundreds of mods available for these bikes, but they don't all make a big difference in comfort, durability, or even speed. For example, a lot of aftermarket CDIs for this bike just increase the rev limiter. This is actually bad for the XR100 because it doesn't even make more power up there. The power is already tapering off, and it's more likely to float the valves and cause excessive wear and tear on the engine. So in this video, I'm going to share the 3 categories where you can actually improve the performance and comfort of your XR100, as well as simple mods from free to cheap to expensive in each category. Category number 1 is improving the durability and safety of your bike. And the first upgrade would be the BBR frame cradle. Since the XR100 doesn't have a frame cradle under the engine, the engine is essentially the frame cradle. One of the easiest ways to stiffen up the frame so it doesn't flex as much and break motor mounts, as well as protect the engine from like landing on logs or rocks so you don't crack the cases and have a really expensive engine repair, is getting a frame cradle. This is really easy to bolt on in just a few minutes, and I believe it's less than $200. Mod number 2 in this category is a BBR chain guide. A really easy problem to have is when the chain gets too loose, it can pop off the rear sprocket and then bunch up at the front sprocket and then crack the cases. So an easy and pretty affordable way to prevent that is getting an aluminum upgraded chain guide. I think the bike comes with one, but it's really cheap and flimsy, and the chain still pops off pretty easily. So getting that aluminum guide will keep the chain on both sprockets even when it's too loose, so you won't destroy your case. Category number 2 is upgrading the suspension for comfort as well as safety, because if you weigh over 120 pounds, you're going to be bottoming out the XR100 suspension pretty easily. And bottoming out is simply fully compressing the forks and the shock. And when that happens, it's really easy to get bucked around on the bike as well as start breaking stuff, because the frame and the rest of the bike is starting to absorb those tough impacts instead of the suspension compressing it. So the first free mod you can do is adding PVC spacers in the fork legs. This is just cutting like a 1/2 inch or 1 inch long PVC spacers, depending on how much preload you want to add, using the right diameter and putting them under the fork caps. This increases the preload, which makes them initially stiffer. And even though it's not going to prevent bottoming out if you're a fast, aggressive rider that's over 150 pounds, it will help a little bit, and it's virtually free if you already have the PVC pipe. Suspension mod number 2 is upgrading to stiffer fork springs. This is fairly easy to do. You just pull the old fork springs out and then install some new ones for around 100 or 150 bucks. And this will make a huge difference in the stiffness of the forks, because the stock ones are really nice and soft, which is good for a lightweight beginner rider. But once you start riding aggressively, they're gonna compress really quickly and bottom out and feel like a pogo stick. So adding 2 new springs, or if 2 is too stiff, you can actually do 1 heavy duty and 1 stock to kind of get in between, to make it a little less stiff and improve the traction on the bike if 2 heavy duty springs are too stiff. Suspension number 3 is heavier weight fork oil. This is the poor man's method for revalving these damper rod forks. It essentially just slows down the compression and rebound of the forks, making them feel stiffer. So doing that with a combination of the stiffer fork springs will make it feel a lot stiffer and more controlled if you're a heavier rider. Suspension mod number 4 is rear shock upgrade. This starts with a heavier duty spring similar to the front, because you want it balanced front and rear, because if the front is stiff and the rear is soft, it's not going to be balanced. You're going to be bucked around all over the place. You might be able to get combination front and rear stiffer springs. I'll link to those in the description below. Otherwise, suspension mod number 5 is upgrading to an aftermarket rear shock. The difference here is the adjustability and a little bit better comfort, because with the stock shock, stiffer spring, it'll feel stiffer, but the damping isn't really changing. This means it'll still kind of feel like a pogo stick. It'll feel harsh, especially when hitting small bumps, where the aftermarket shock has better damping control, especially if it's adjustable. You can slow down or speed up the compression and rebound. Just make it more versatile for better comfort based on your weight and riding style. Now on to category number 3, which you might be waiting for, and that is engine and overall performance and speed. The first performance mod you want to do is getting the carb dialed in. If your bike takes more than 3 or 4 kicks to start when cold or more than 1 when hot, the carb isn't dialed in. Or if it's sputtering or bogging really bad, then it could use some tuning. The best place to start is with the fuel screw, because you don't need to remove the carb or take anything off of it. You can actually learn how to do it in just a few minutes with my free guide. I'll link to that in the description below as well. Performance mod number 2 is opening up the air box, and this is either taking the snorkel off or cutting the top of the air box open bigger. This allows for more potential air to be sucked in through the engine, and the more air you can get through the engine, the more potential power you have. However, if you just do that, then you might actually have less power. It might be bogging worse because it's running too lean. And if it is doing that, then you're going to need to richen the jetting. Number 3 performance thing is cleaning the baffle in the exhaust. Now, this isn't the most common thing, but if your bike is really old, has a lot of hours on it, you can take the baffle screen out. Whether you have an older model, there should be 2 bolts on the side. You can pull it out, clean it, or if you have a newer one with a removable end cap, you can take that screen out, clean it, put it back in. It'll get a little bit better flow for it. Or number 4 is just a better flowing exhaust tip, because the stock one is, even though it has good power, it's somewhat restrictive. So taking the end cap off and putting a better flowing one on can give it a little bit more power, a throttle response, but it will make it louder. So if you're in a noise conscious area, you probably want to keep it stock. However, again, the jetting is probably going to change. It's probably going to be too lean. It's going to be bogging. It might start backfiring and popping on deceleration. So you need to tune the jetting if it's too lean after a better flowing tip. Or for the most expensive exhaust mod is going to full aftermarket exhaust. It costs more, but you're going to get overall better performance, because when you get one that's specifically made for the XR100, it's going to run better from low RPM all the way up to high RPM as long as it's tuned properly. Performance mod number 6 is a big bore kit. This is when you start getting into more money and more investment. If you plan on keeping the bike for a while, upgrading to like a 120cc big bore kit makes the engine 20% bigger, so you're gonna feel 15 to 20% more power. However, again, the jetting might change. You might need to go richer or leaner because it's sucking in more gas. So always get it tuned properly for each specific mod that you're doing. Number 7 is a hotter camshaft. Now the cam is what opens and closes the intake and the exhaust valve, and the stock one, it doesn't open them very much. So if you get a hotter or a bigger cam, it's going to open the intake and exhaust valve more, allowing more air and fuel in and more air and fuel out, potentially making more power. Now, depending on which type of cam you get, you can get one that's tuned for more low-end power or mid-range or top-end. So you always want to choose the right combination for the goal that you're going for. So if you want more low-end, you want to get all the mods that are good for low-end power, or if you're looking for more wide open, full throttle racing bike, get all the mods that are tuned for top end power. Number 8 is a bigger carburetor. And the reason I didn't start out with this is because the stock one is a pretty good size for a stock engine. I believe it's 22 millimeter, the PE22. It starts and runs really good, but if you go with a bigger bore engine, and a hotter cam, the carburetor is going to be the choking point because it can only flow so much air. So you might notice more low end and mid-range torque, but it'll feel a little bit flat on top end. We'll go into that bigger carb with the bigger engine. You're going to get more top end horsepower out of it. Then number 9 is the cylinder head porting. It's another restrictive point similar to the small carb, where if you get it ported properly, not just making it bigger, but going to a reputable performance shop that knows these XR100 engines and how to get the right power out of them, this can make a huge difference in power as well. Again, you want the right combination. So you need to tell them what type of power you want, whether low end, mid range, or high RPM power. And then number 10 is a lightened flywheel. This doesn't increase power, but it'll decrease the amount of spinning inertia mass of the engine, making it rev up quicker, but also rev down quicker. So if you want something that revs up quickly, it's better for racing than taking your flywheel to a machinist and getting it lightened by like half a pound or maybe even full pound. I can't remember how much you can take off of these safely, but you do have to keep in mind that making it lighter will make it more easily to stall because it'll rev back down quickly. So which mods do you have or are planning on doing? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want links to these products, I got them linked in the description below. I'm Kelly Fagan from MX Hideout. Ride safe, have fun.